Hello, everyone. We are live here with Judah Bernard with the Rise Creating Your Voice. I am the wisdom dialoguer and the motivational warrior of the Rise Creating Your Voice, and also the dialogue coach. We have a guest that's coming on that is Dirty Reds, and we're talking about the journey. And we want everyone to come on in where we are. We're gonna invite a couple of people. See if they can come in. I don't know if people can see this just yet. To join the video and just make sure that we coming in and letting people see what the journey is. How you doing, Juan Jose Martinez? We are just coming in. We're doing the journey. We're waiting for our special guest to come in. I am Judah Bernard with the Rise Creating Your Voice, the Wisdom Dialoguer, the Motivational Warrior, and also the Dialogue Coach for the Rise Creating Your Voice. And wanting you guys to know that we are going to have a special guest on, and it's going to be called The Journey, and understanding what journeys mean, and understanding, and I think it realizes that in journals, pretty much what you're writing is your journey. And also, if you're looking at the journey, what is your journey? What is everybody's journey? And I think that's the most important part of what is everybody's journeys today. We're going to just wait till the special guest come on. Request. I'm just trying to find a particular person so we can come in. There we go. Just keeping it real. A little bit about the Rise Creating Your Voice. It's about truth and transparency, and also just about getting things out and creating yourself and being responsible for creating yourself too as well. So we're definitely just waiting on our special guest to come in, and we'll get started. How's everybody doing on this fine Saturday morning? Happy holidays and special thankful things that you did for the holiday season. So we want to be reminded that you also should be thankful every day, because this is a day that God has made, and we should be glad and rejoice in it. Definitely just trying to continue to going on and keep going with the natural things. Here we are. Hey, writing by Winifred. Said she's unable to join, so I hope she can able to come in. We're telling your followers. We are trying to get more people in, so make sure. Good morning. Good morning. We are talking about journeys. Oh, there we go. Let's see. Can we request her to join in? No. How this goes. Go ahead and accept the invite I sent you, Dirty Red, so we can get started with this. Oh, here we are. Oh, there we go. It's probably going to come in real slow.
Can you see me now?
There you are. How are you? Can you hear me?
Absolutely. Can you hear me?
Yes, I can. Yes, I can. So I want to go ahead and get this pumped, because I know people are in here, and I don't know if you can tag people so they can go ahead and hear this great stuff that we got to talk about too as well. So I don't think it brings up my thing on I'm in the country. I'm just going to say that. So it's a little slow out here. Now, if I was back in D.C., it would be a fast effect for me, but I'm actually in Mississippi, and I fly out today. So
Really?
So what are some things? Yes, definitely. So I want to definitely introduce you to as well. We're going to introduce you as Dirty Reds. I don't know if you want people to know your real name. So we will. That's up to you. So I want people to.
I said you could introduce me and give me my first name.
Okay, this is Tiffany, Dirty Reds. But one thing I like, because I think what we have to understand, the whole perspective, is love for everyone, love across the board. I think we've lost that touch somewhere, especially as African Americans, especially as humans, and especially as society continues to grow people have taken the word love and kind of twisted it in their own perspective. And love means genuine love, and I've talked about it on several of my podcasts. There's agape love, feel your love, and all that and stuff. But my thing is, if you are, as people say, they are Christians or God loving and things like that, then I think people should go to the whole perspective of you love everyone, no matter what.
Absolutely.
That's just the first and foremost. But people get into the motion of, I don't like their ways, or I don't like this, I don't like that. But you're not them. So why,
It shouldn't be
that's
conditional.
my biggest problem.
It shouldn't be conditional.
Yes, yes,
I think a lot of the times it is. You can't
yes.
in one breath say that I love something or someone unconditionally and then have like limitations to the condition. Even there's
Right,
something as simple as, well, I want to donate something to like a charity, or I want to give something to a homeless person, but at the same time, then it's like, but I hope they don't use it for, you can't judge them. Either you're going to give it to them and pray that they use it how they should, but it's not my place to sit
right,
here and say, well, I'm going to give you this on conditions. That's not how it works.
right,
I think it's disingenuous. But a lot of the times we find
right.
ourselves doing that. Now, if you don't feel inclined to, just don't give. But I how do you say,
Don't do it.
well, don't, just giving with conditions. You don't know necessarily what this individual is struggling with per se. So I think a lot
Right.
of times people love like that. I love my child, but who child, she gay. Or I love my child, but like,
But what
how do
is,
you love with conditions? I don't understand that. I
so I,
don't. I don't.
well, we want to get into the topic, and the topic is about the journey. And the one reason why I know Tiffany and how I know Tiffany, it ain't like we talk every day, so I know the conversation is going to be quite vivid and quite exquisite because we just have those genuine conversations when we do speak.
Yeah.
I was an instructor and I love kick. Tiffany was one of the clients, and um, she and I just took a liking to each other, and we was like, hey, let's just stay in touch. And that's one thing that we did. And throughout things, you never know who you're going to touch when you're in a situation. And I think I've touched a lot of lives, and I love kickboxing wherever I am. But then again, you have genuine people like Dirty Reds or Tiffany that come and say, hey, let's
Yeah.
do that. And I I, I'm the type of person, I'm giving anyway. So I remember one time she was like, hey, well, they used to call me J. So he was like, hey, JB, I want to get how you do your push-ups. And I was like, okay. I don't know if you remember. And I was like,
Yep.
and I recorded an actual video for her on how to do push-ups and sent it to her. So I enjoy stuff like that because the thing is, it's not about where people are, but helping them get where they need to be is the important part. And I think my whole premise is, if I can help one person along the way, as I travel along the way, then my living will not be in vain. So I just like touching people and seeing the residuals of their benefits because I excel when people grow. It's all about growth. And when you
Absolutely.
grow, I grow. So people don't understand that. It's all
Absolutely.
about growth. So I definitely want to topic because I had about 2 cups of coffee and I can go on around the room with that. Number one is we're talking about the journey. And let's talk about the journey. And in your perspective, I want you to introduce yourself and understand that the journey is Tiffany's journey.
Encompassing.
And it might be your journey too.
It
Right.
encompasses
And the
quite a few
thing is,
things.
yeah. And I think what people say is they don't have to understand that your journey because it's your journey. So I think what you guys can take from this is bits and pieces of information to kind of decipher what your journey looks like too as well. So without further ado, Judah's going to turn it over to Tiffany, Dirty Red, so we can go ahead and get this pump off on her. So go ahead and introduce yourself. I'm sorry.
No, you are fine. I love it. I love the banter. I'm all for interactions. By all means, if something strikes you or you passionate about something, please interrupt me. Um, so my name's
No, you're
Tiffany,
fine.
but But the reason why people call me Dirty Reds is because there's a little inside joke. I'll give you the backstory. Someone told me that I look like Red Grant, the comedian. And so that's the backstory with Dirty Reds. So I said, well, I can't be Red
Right.
Grant, but I could be, something else. And I always have kind of, what do you call it? Like my banter can be a little forward sometimes in a closely knit circle. So, that's why the dirty comes in, sexual. So, so then I said, okay, Dirty Reds instead of, Red Grant. So a lot of the times people would tag me, like somebody
Right.
tagged me on my page because Red Grant is actually running for mayor. And so they're like, oh, Tiff, you running for mayor?
Right.
It's always a little this inside joke. So that's the name Red Grant. But in regards to a journey, the way that all of this kind of like came to be a journey is in 2019, I lost my wife to medical malpractice. And the magnitude of a
And
loss.
we empathize.
And the magnitude of a loss
Definitely
like
empathize
that.
with that.
Thank you. And the magnitude of that loss is otherworldly. I've learned so much about myself. I've learned so much about grief, what it looks like, what healing looks like. And then it also made me kind of dig into other things because immediately after it happened, I sought therapy. And I know a lot of the times in communities of color specifically that there's a negative connotation with grief in counseling. It's like we don't allow ourselves the space to feel what we're feeling. And who wants to go sit at a therapist? I don't feel the need to tell somebody how I'm feeling, some random person, and it just already starts out negative. And I tell people how it worked for me is that you have to find the therapist that works for you. And I liken it to service of a restaurant. And I know this is a strange analogy, but like if you went to a restaurant and you received bad service from a waiter or waitress, would you just sit at the table? You're either going to request the management fix it, or you're going to request that you be sat somewhere else. And that's the tone that I took with my therapist. Because the first one I had, she served the purpose, but the second one that I ended up with, she moved me in a way that we kind of like gelled. And that's the kind of interaction that you need for therapy or a healthy, relationship with a therapist. So that's kind of like how it started. So
I think for me is I call it car shopping.
Yeah.
My analogy is car shopping. Like, you know what kind of car you want, and you know all the bells and whistles you want with it. So in that analogy of car shopping being that, are you going to drive off the lot with a lemon? It's some lemon therapists here. And they just want to get you in and do whatever, and then that's it. But your therapy should be mainly focused and centrally focused on you. And most people don't get that. They think that the therapist should be helping them. No, they're trying to push you forward to the next steps and manage things that you can't control. As an ex-therapist, I'm telling y'all guys now, I was an ex-therapist, so I know these things. So the thing is, they should be centralizing everything around you. And that's one important thing. So I just wanted to put that out there.
Yeah, so definitely my therapist was able to help me develop coping mechanisms to mitigate the grief, because there's different stages and it's different for everyone. It's like a fingerprint. Yes, everyone has one, but it's unique to the individual. And so I had to learn like what my triggers were. I had to learn how to deal with the anxiety of the loss, because you will develop an anxiety. Well, I won't say you will, most people do. And I mean anxiety, it's not like a panic attack. It's more like it's separation anxiety. You have to wrap your head around that you are physically and emotionally never going to talk to this person in the tangible realm. It has nothing to do with what you believe in, because it will test your faith. But just the idea that you'll never talk to this person again. And it's like, I tell people all the time, until you understand it or until you have experienced it, you won't quite understand it. And I know some people say, well, I've lost my grandma. It's different. The only losses that I've noticed in dealing with others that are serious grievers are like someone that lost their parents or a child. It's just very different, because even when I've lost my uncles and aunts or whoever that was that parent role for you, because some people were raised by their grandmother. So it's like that magnitude. And so I had to learn that I am no longer a couple. So your whole world changes from your finances to your emotions. I mean, I literally had people unintentionally like exclude me from spaces that we were having a couples dinner. I forgot I'm no longer a couple. The awkwardness of it, you know, to the spectrum of even dating again, to all of these things that are a process that you have to be able to work through. So in digging into myself, I learned a lot about myself as well. Because a lot of times people say healing, 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 and they'll throw this buzzword out there, and it's just like, what does it actually look like? Like, what's the framework? Like, what's the blueprint? So I'm always, you know, saying, hey, I actually have something like I can impart you with, like it's actual steps that you can take. Like, first of all, to address my anxiety, I revert back to something that I love that brought me joy in the midst of all of that tragedy. Coloring. It helps with the idleness of the mind because your mind will continue to replay the events. And so to delve into a little bit more personal, that she died from medical malpractice. She went in for an elective procedure, and they poked a hole in her stomach, and it caused what is sepsis, an infection, and that infection shut down her organs. And when they had her intubated with a tube, literally I'm holding her hand, she's bleeding out of every orifice, and they're telling me that once we give her this last dose of fentanyl, she will never wake up again. And you had to sit with that, and she died within 24 hours. And all we could do was communicate with a head nod. I love you, you love me. And then whatever they had done to her, that they were unable to sew her back up because her whole middle was open because her vitals were so weak. And then she was swollen beyond recognition. And that was the last image that I saw. And then when I started to post it on Facebook, what was interesting is like friends started to come. So my parents came. Unfortunately, both her parents were deceased. Her half sister came, and then like we just had our, you know, community wrapped around us. You know, she worked for the NAACP. It had to be maybe 25, 30 people in that ER. And like literally, like it was like love escaped your grasp without you letting go. And so I paint the picture very vividly because every morning at 6:30 in the morning, I would be haunted with the images of that. I could not sleep. I could not rest. So I learned also in the journey of grief is that rest is imperative. Sleep is imperative. You have to be able to rest. So I got a weighted blanket. These are like actual steps. And when we're talking about healing, this is what I'm saying. I'm giving you like gems. A weighted blanket mimics swaddling like you do a child. And so that weighted blanket allowed my body to feel coddled. A body pillow helped me deal with the physical absence. And then sometimes I would take a sleep aid like a melatonin. So I tried to, you know, entertain things that were healthy, you know, because when I was feeling down and depressed, I try to stay away from alcohol. That's because it could become a problem. So, you know, maybe some melatonin or maybe some Z-Quil, something, whatever works for you, because every sleep aid doesn't work for every person. So between that, a weighted blanket, the body pillow, and then I would talk to my therapist twice a week. And we would have these conversations. She's like, what have you been doing with yourself? What is it? What's today feel like? What are the emotions that you feel? And so she actually helped me put words and articulate what I was feeling, you know, because grief comes like waves. And now I liken it to like a chronic pain because it's been 2 years now. And it never goes away. It's always in the recesses of your mind, and it just shows up when it wants to. So it's like, you know, you ever go outside, oh, my knee hurt, it's cold outside today, well, I can feel the rain come. It's like that. Because the frequency of the wave changed. Initially, oh, it'll overwhelm you, it'll drown you. I mean, there's been times where I sat in here and I wanted to kill myself. That's how bad the pain felt. And I'm not even someone, what I would perceive to be like, it was situational depression, you know, and I had to learn and sit with that because at one point I was embarrassed, you know, that I felt like that. Because I'm like, shit, I carry a weapon for a living. You know, there's so many personal things. And I'm like, how am I sitting up here like and it was that I didn't want to feel what I was feeling anymore. It had nothing to do with like other types of depression where it's just, you know, triggersome. For me, it was just, you just wake up to the reality of this person no longer here and be haunted by the images of it and the anxiety of it all. And it just, it's otherworldly. And so it just became this thing. Like I just tried to, you know, change my mindset because unfortunately I could never change the circumstance of what I was dealing with.
Right.
So I would color, would help me with that nauseating, nervous, sick feeling that comes with the anxiety. I would walk, or try to do some kind of exercise. I mean, don't judge me now. But
Oh no.
but I tried to do something to just keep the mind occupied. And it's not to say so busy that you're distracting
Right.
yourself, because you can't. It's a slippery slope. You don't want to be so distracted that you're not addressing your problems. But those moments when you're feeling overwhelmed or the anxiousness, yes, movement helps.
Right.
Surrounding yourself with positive things and people. And then so I had another layer. The pandemic happened, and so now this is compounded. I'm dealing with the world is sick, and I have to, the way to mitigate this disease or virus is to social distance and isolate. And that is one of the problems of depression, is isolation. So it's like she died November 2019. By March of 2020, Governor Hogan shut the state of Maryland down, and just everything just went from there. So I got to deal with grieving, and now I'm isolated.
Right.
It was just compounded. That's the best word that I can use to define how it made me feel. But I had such, and I still have, let me not say have, it's past tense. I have such a great support system, from her friends exclusively,
Right.
to the NAACP reaching out to me, to my mother. I had a network of people that like kind of surrounded me. And then what I started to find out was I found peace in helping others that were experiencing what I was experiencing. Because my mother gave me this book called Healing After Loss. It is a beautiful book, and I wish that I had a physical copy to show you, but because I have it on audio book.
Okay.
It talked about this different stages of grief, and it's a daily read. You can read it like for the day, or sometimes I would just read it until it made me feel better. And the basis of the book was that the lady lost her daughter. And so she puts the words to what you're feeling like, and just the different emotions. So in the book, she talks about how you make friends in grief. So I belong to a lesbian widows group because it's unique. There's widows, but then also because of my lifestyle, there is a slight difference, just, same gender loving. So I got paired up with that, and then I met so many women within that group. And then, like, a lot of the times I would just be in different spaces, and I would hear someone losing their spouse, and literally would just reach out to them with just like this profound message, just letting them know that it's okay that you're feeling what you're feeling.
Right.
It's gonna be, a thing, but I would just try to give them everything literally that I'm saying to you orally in a written text, to let them know what to expect as best I could, and then just try to be the ear. So we'll text a lot, and so I find when I reach out to people that were going through the thing, my thing is I had a grief kit. I literally would mail people that book, a weighted blanket, and some melatonin. And that I would call it a grief kit. And I mean, I could just look at my Amazon cart all of 2020, like I needed to start a whole nonprofit, just the things that I was doing. But it was just but it helped me. It was therapy for me.
Right. But I think more people have to understand that journey, being that we all grieve differently.
Absolutely.
And one thing is, no one can tell you when to start or stop grieving. That's your process. And I think that's the number one key that, and I'm going to give a story about my uncle that passed away this previous year. And I was speaking at his funeral. And I was like, this is a church. Let me tell y'all something. Stop calling my cousin. Give her an opportunity to grieve.
You have to learn how to set boundaries.
I said, because you have to. Because the thing is, she can't set those boundaries right now. This is what I said in the church. But I said, she has allowed me to say this for her. Let her call you. Stop calling her. See, the thing is, what we start thinking is she might not need you right now.
A lot of people don't
understand Yes, they don't. Oh my gosh, sometimes want to be alone. And not saying that alone time is that isolation, but that alone time to process. Because guess what? You're only one person. And if 50 people start calling you, they don't understand the compound of them continue to call. It's going to take you deeper down.
It does. But you know what? What's the old line that says the road to hell is often paved with good intentions? And I think people mean
Exactly.
well, but there's also this balance. There's a delicate balance that you as the griever have to understand too. When you get to that space and you're able to set healthy boundaries, because you always got to have an out.
Right.
And I'll elaborate. You always got to have an out, and you always got to put people and feed them from a long handled spoon. So
right.
The first issue is I had to learn how to not feel obligated to owe everyone a response. It's not, I don't owe you a response. And it's not that I was being mean. You deal with so much. It's a shock. It's a shock. It's an utter shock. And like I said, all I can say is it's otherworldly. So I had to learn, hey, I don't have the capacity. I had to learn that I had a limited capacity. So if you think of it as a rating of 100, right? Grief took about 80%. The rest I had for life. And when I say life, I mean the daily. So this was daily. So I had to still maybe potentially try to even go to work. I still had to adult. So that capacity or that band was very, very narrow. That window was very limited. So that's what I mean when I say you got to learn how to set boundaries. And even your good Judies, oh baby, they're going to, they don't know, come on, I'm going to get you out this house. And sometimes it's okay. And sometimes, unfortunately, you have to sit in those emotions and deal with them. You can't always run from them. There isn't anything that's going to help you cope. You just really have to sit with it in the rawness of it, as crazy as that sounds.
Right.
And so it's like I had to learn that. And then people will get offended. And some people don't know how to deal with that. But I had to learn too that people avoided me because of it too. They were afraid because they didn't know what to say or how to feel, and they didn't themselves deal with death well. And so then it caused them to just kind of like withdraw. And so you can't take it personal. So it's multi-dimensional. There's a lot of layers to it. And then it's just every day I gave myself a limit on what I could handle and what I could deal with. And then I would make my list. If I didn't get them 5 things done, I didn't beat myself up. It was just what it is. It was just the capacity that I was able to function moment for moment. I mean, I just had to focus on the basic necessities. Water, eating. It literally will take your emotion. Your emotions will just control you to the point where you just are just not even taking care of the basic needs. Bathing. Anybody that's ever been in my home will tell you I am notorious for just being very meticulous. I didn't want to take a shower. You don't care. You just want to lay in the bed. You just and it's like that. Sometimes that's okay. I just know that it's not always healthy to stay there. So, it's just been this thing where, like I said, helping people has been therapeutic. Coloring has been therapeutic. Walking has been therapeutic. Surrounding myself around positiveness. Other people that have experienced similar losses or the exact same kind of loss, that has been beneficial to talk to my therapist in addition to having a support group outside of that, because the therapist isn't always available, And then I found myself having to play with the question of finding joy. What is joy? What does it look like? What does happiness look like? How do you regain that when this person was the center of your world, right? And I realized that, okay, it's not something external, it's internal. It's not a destination. If it was, then you'd have all subscribed, bought a ticket. Hey, I'd have been first class. No, but this was a thing. You had to, I mean, it just made me go through so many changes. I've grown. I'm definitely not who I was. Death does change you. I find myself things that I cared about at one point I don't care. And then there's some things that I don't take for granted. I'm so thankful that I don't have any regrets where that was concerned either. For my final moments, to leading up to them. I always was the kind of person that I sing people their praises while they're living. So she knew how I felt about her, And so, but sometimes people leave folks and have regrets. It'd be like the imitation of life. They sitting up there crying at the funeral, and the one making the most noise is the one that had the most issues with the person. You know, so it's just hey, that the first. I mean, they'll lay down in the casket. They got the body in the ground good, and they jumping in there. And I'm not saying it to make light or fun of the seriousness of death.
No, it's been honest. It's been honest and transparent.
Woo, I mean, they lay down.
People need to have. Yeah, I think people need to have grips on is to kind of value people now while they're living, and I think what people need to understand is it's the song says, please give me my flowers while I live. And the basis of this song is we horn on so much hate, and we horn in so much dislike. We horn on what the next person is doing. And one message that I gave is, if you mind your own business, you don't have time to be worried about everybody else's business. Because if you were so perfect, you would be doing everything right.
Absolutely.
So if we focus more on us than other people, see, the problem is that's why you so messed up. Because instead of focusing on you, you focus on other people.
Absolutely.
But your center should be you. I try to tell people, I don't have time to be focusing on y'all.
And so
I'm trying to do me.
Yeah, with that hate notion too, I had to learn. And so that's two parts for me. So then learning about the fragility of life, then I started to reevaluate my associations with stuff. And then and therapy kind of made me wanted to dig into some other situations. It's related and not unrelated. Mm-hmm. So like, you know how you harbor on to hatred, and how do you grow as an individual? Mm-hmm. You know, when you just holding on to things, a lot of baggage and luggage. And I remember reading this book one time, and it was by Bishop Jakes, and it was called Let It Go. And there was something in there that he said, and it resonates with me now more so than ever. He said, sometimes there are things that happen in your life that you have to forgive without the benefit of an apology for your own emotional survival. So whether you got what was owed to you or not, you have to move forward. So then I got that book by Tabitha Brown, which is very profound. I love it. I love Tabitha Brown. She narrates her book, and so you get the tone and the feel. And I just feel like I'm talking to like one of my aunties or something when me and her are close in age. So then she talks about hatred again. So here's this message: keep coming up, hatred, hatred, hatred. So I mentioned that to say that I actually started on purging the hatred that I have like towards my father being absent. So I decided to write him a letter. And that's another thing. Like I said, we often talk about healing, but we never actually give like the blueprint or framework. Like, what do you start with first? How does it actually happen? How does it occur? You know, so I said, I'm going to write him a letter. So I wrote this letter, and I even thought about submitting it maybe to like New York Times or something, just as an op-ed to absent fathers, because you don't realize how impactful someone's absence is. So my father was this talented guy. He was kind of like the Bob Ross in Minnesota. And what's interesting is that I developed his same talent, from drawing to my love for music and art and all of this. And I didn't want to entertain it. And then as a child, I didn't realize that I was cutting my own nose off to spite my face. That was the pattern. That was. And so anything that was a reflection of him, I didn't want to entertain it. And here I am walking around here my whole life, 39, about to be 40 next year. And I'm harboring hatred to an individual that I've never even met. And so then everyone says, well, did you reach out? Michael's still living. I've called him, asked could I visit, asked could he visit. I said I will fully fund it. He just does not want to entertain it. And so that's his business. And you know, sometimes what we do is that we want people to be responsible, and he is incapable. Just knowing how he was raised from my aunts, he's incapable. And so what I had to do was that I had to literally just make peace with that. So I wrote him a letter, and I've mailed it to him. I'm not looking for a response, but I wanted to get off my chest how his absence has made me feel. But then also to let him know that I forgive him. Because I'm tired of carrying around that burden of his absence. Right. And there's so many things, you know, like I told my mother, you know, also, and in addition to purging that, you know, it's interesting how in the family dynamic, you know, there's a lot of generational curses. I feel like that I'm bogged down with. They got nothing to do with me. I don't want none of it. I'm not gonna subscribe to none of it no more. I'm not entertaining it just because you're not speaking to this one about something that had to do with me. I wasn't even around. Why? I got to be, I don't want to subscribe to it. So I'm just
Yeah.
at this point
And the
where,
one thing,
go ahead.
yeah, and I think the one thing people have to understand is that we are where we came from. And we become that behavior, that conduct that's already in our DNA, in our gene, in our genetic makeup. Most of us, if we don't address, because one thing I tell people every day, you are not your father. You are not your mother. You are not your grandmother. But the things that we see, we visually become behaviorally impaired because of, we got to understand, grandma was born in the 50s or the 30s or the 20s. That's not happening in 2021 now.
Right.
Daddy and mom were born in the 50s. That's not happening in 2021. So the thing is, as we continue to evolve, and that's the important part, is evolving and changing your mindset, number one.
Absolutely.
Because if you continue to act that, it's not going to relate to the current situations that's happening right now. That's why we get hung up and caught up in different situations, because behaviorally we're trying to emulate the same positions that we had when we were with our parents.
And there's also some of it I just feel like is a trauma response too. We don't
Yeah.
realize that we operate in trauma. There's so many different things just with my lifestyle that I operated in trauma with it. I didn't realize, not being comfortable in my own skin, and allowing situations to dictate, how I moved. You can call it fear,
Right.
but it's exactly that. Just in childhood traumas. I read this one book, Too Soon Old, Too Late Smart. It was a psychologist, and he says on one of the books how he was in the military and someone dropped him off in the middle of the field, and he had like this map and he had to like scout out the location. And the problem was is that the map didn't match the ground. He said, isn't it funny how we got this construct in our head about that the map don't match the ground? Like in our head, life is supposed to be this way, look like this, but then we trying to make it match, and it's not necessarily the case. And then he's like, childhood traumas have a limit. And it's not to say that what wasn't or what occurred isn't something significant or profound. And yes, it did, affect you, but it's like, don't let it be the crutch. There's a way to still operate outside of it. And it's like the trauma had become so much of your identity that you look in the mirror and you don't even know who you are anymore, because it's you. And it's like, you don't even know how to be who you are. You don't recognize yourself because of the trauma. And it's like, so like a lot of the stuff he makes sense. So it just made me kind of want to start digging and getting some of them layers off, because it's like, why do I walk around here and hate somebody that just all of those things.
Right. And the one thing I know you talked about childhood trauma is, number one thing is, when are we going to start unlocking that childhood trauma?
Absolutely. Let's
because
get
it. If it doesn't surface, it's going to keep internalizing itself. And the more band-aids you put on it, it's going to spurt out later on in life. And the one thing is, people don't address that. And one thing that I did with definitely my parents is, let's talk about what happened in my childhood. I actually had to sit down, and some of the people that I coach and I mediate with, and I tell them, have that conversation with your parents. Because the number one thing is, you had feelings when you were a child, regardless of whether they did something right or wrong in your eyes. Talk about your feelings.
Absolutely.
Don't tell them they were right or wrong. Tell them how you felt.
Yeah, absolutely. I told
because
my
at any point,
I have to.
Yeah, why not? Because at their thing is, some of the responses sometimes when I mediate or, well, I was trying to do the best I can. Okay, let's stop right there. We have so many resources, but the thing is, stop trying to do the best you can and try to understand your child first.
Yeah, it's a thing.
See, some of us,
The
because
parents shield them too. It's a
go ahead.
sheltering. Like they want to coddle. Like my mother, when it came to my father, she always just told me the positive things about him. She never said anything negative. And when I would ask questions, she would answer them. But then anything past that, it wasn't permissible. So when I went back to my home state where I was born, and we had dinner with some friends and some relatives there, and they asked me how I felt that I'm in the same state where my father is. Are you going to go see him in XYZ? And then I started to express myself. My mother said, I never knew. And I said, but you never gave me the space or the opportunity to tell me for me to tell you how I
That
felt.
part.
What it was is that it was shut down. She says, I
Right.
was trying to protect you. Okay. I'm in my 30s now. I get the protection. And probably it was for the best that I wasn't around him with some of the things that I learned. But at the same time, you still never gave me the space to allow me to express it, though. So that was the piece for me
And here,
that I noticed. Mm-hmm.
and here was these. Are you protecting me or are you protecting yourself?
Could be because my mother has had years as an
That part.
adult to address
Because
how she felt about her ex-husband. You get what I'm saying? She had time to process that. She was an
right,
adult
because
when all of this transpired.
right,
I was a child.
yeah. One thing that I let them know is some of the stuff I can tell you that I already knew. But then again, I'm looking for the parental figure to let it out because okay, all all the children might not get it because they didn't have the intellect as I had. But then again, give me the notion of being able to address that at that particular time. Well, I was just trying. It's not about you trying, but the thing is, it's about you learning and still processing whatever it is. That's why I tell my godson a lot. Why are you mad? Tell me why you are mad.
Mm-hmm.
Because the thing is, I might have done something to hurt you. And I tell him, I was like, well, you know what? I need you to use your voice. I don't need you to use your anger. Use this. Because if you can tell me, maybe my voice raised to an octave that you're not appreciative of.
Yeah, because it can get lost in
Yeah,
translation.
that's
Mm-hmm. Lost in
exactly. It
translation.
get lost.
And the message. That's why I say sometimes you got to sit with what you're feeling and
Right.
really see what's being addressed. But you got to
Yes.
remember too, even as an adult, accountability can feel like an attack when you're not in a place of maturity. And so
That
I've
part.
learned that some things that
Right.
have happened, I had to sit with myself and really see why I'm feeling the way I'm feeling. Like really analyze your emotions. Why am I feeling
Mm-hmm.
the way like this? Because someone gave me like critique. Just give an example.
Mm-hmm.
At one point I wasn't the one like in my early 20s. Oh, you couldn't say nothing to me. So critique, I'm like but now it's like you have to sit with it and really see what's being said and then actively listen, because a lot of the times we listen with the intent to reply, so then you're so
Right.
focused on what your response is that you've missed everything, the latter, and didn't hear the former, and that is another thing. So
Mm-hmm.
yeah, it's just been some things that all of this has caused me to kind of like dig up and drudge up. But I'm like, hey, let's get it, because my thing is I want to move past it. I'm tired of all of this stuff bogging me down. I'm tired of it. Let's address it and sort it. And
Right.
like I said, from grief, that doesn't go anywhere. But I know how to adjust to it
Right.
when it comes. The stuff with my
Right.
father, oh no, we need to go ahead and purge it because it's unnecessary. Why? Why am I holding on to this? Or just even relationships in my
What
family,
you
family members that I'm not, that I'm just not. I have to make peace with those relationships, for what they are. And I think making peace doesn't mean that we got to be best friends. I'm not saying make peace like this
exactly.
means you got to hang out with them, but it doesn't mean I have to harbor any ill will or what those negative emotions were.
Right.
And I don't necessarily have to deal with you. I can if I choose to, but it doesn't mean that I have to. So I think, that may look different for a lot of people, but that's what I mean when I reference healing. It's just addressing some of those emotions.
And
It's
let
a
me
thing.
just say, for the people that just joined, we're talking life journey and a journey about grief, a spouse, and also ends with an
Personal
absent
growth.
parent too as well, writing letters. And And I want to give a shout out to Life of an Alpha Male. It's playing at Lithica, Maryland in the Hoyts West Nursery Cinema. So definitely go and watch that. It's produced by Wise Men Productions. Shout out to David Lloyd Marcus and Antoine Chambers as being co-contributors. That's Life of an Alpha Male. It's up in the theater at Hoyts West Nursery Cinemas in Lithica, Maryland. Make sure you go out and see it because it will rock your life. Just letting you know, the Life of an Alpha Male. So, just putting that out there as a little sidebar announcement and thing. But we're going to go back to Tiffany, and the things is because I want to definitely ask you, at this point, what would you change about your journey?
You said what was I changed about?
What would
you went out. You said change. I didn't hear that last part.
Yeah. What would you change about your journey?
Nothing.
Okay.
Even as painful as it's been, I would be remiss not to say that every negative thing that has ever happened to me shaped me. Right? A lot of the times we look at the butterfly, but nobody talks about the caterpillar. We talk about the beauty of a diamond, but nobody talks about the lump of coal. Hell, we talk about that oil that preacher rub across your forehead, but nobody talks about the olive, how it was created under pressure.
Come on.
So all of those things is pressure, timing. There was a story I listened to, Bishop Jakes, and he talked about how children are so enthralled by their parents. And they often, mimic them, want to be like them. So one day he was in the mirror, he lathered up his face, and he had a razor, and he had all of the rag, and he was getting ready to shave. And, the little boy was doing exactly what he was doing. And then he went to reach for the straight razor. And then he says, oh, no, that's not for you. But children are defiant. So what ended up happening later on was that he went behind his father and got the lather and the towel and the straight razor, cut himself profusely. He bled. And he says, isn't it funny that the very thing that's a blessing to you later on in life, given too soon, that same thing is detrimental? So it's about timing as well. And so I would not change a thing. And as painful as the loss was, I've learned so much. I actually understand her a lot more in death than I did in life. Just what she grieved, losing her parents. And I used to tell her it's going to be okay. It's not going to be okay in the sense that it'll go away, but you'll learn how to adjust with it. So I understand. And even though my intentions meant well, it was a road to hell because I used to tell her things like most people would say. And now I understand. I understand. And so just how you address problems and how things could manifest, and be ugly if you let them, And I learned I wasn't in control of anything. I say God makes plans and man laughs. No, man makes plans and God laughs. So it's just a whole bunch of stuff that I just learned. So no, I wouldn't change anything. All of the things, good and the bad, have enabled me to be who I am, what I am. And what I think it says in the scripture said, when I was a child, I thought like a child, I spoke as a child, I acted as a child. But when I became a man, I put away childish things. So like all of these have forced me to grow in ways. So I just look at it for the good and the bad.
And I know you talked about pressure and how you the coal, the diamond, the olive to the oil and things like that. But I'm so reminded of a scripture that said, I press forward to the upper way. Pressing causes pressure. So if you're never pressing forward and you want to stay maintaining, you'll never become that diamond. You'll never become that oil if you don't have pressure. And I want people to understand that pressure needs to be applied if you're planning on being great. Because if you can't understand the trials and tribulations that you have to go in those tests, just to get to that awakening and that spiritual new thing that you have to get to, first of all, finding out what your purpose is. And that's one thing that we talk about on the Rise Creating Your Voice is creating yourself. We have to rub off all of that. I mean, scratch, whatever, scrub. And what I tell people is you got to relinquish everything that you've learned.
Yeah.
Everything.
Is it something
Because
unhealthy?
as
Yes.
individuals, yes, very unhealthy things. And sometimes it could be some good things, but those good things probably weren't for you either. So understand who you are as a person. Stop doing a comparative analysis to who. I can't walk up to Tiffany and say, well, Tiffany, I want to be like you.
Listen, that grass may look green. That grass may look green, but you don't know what we put on that grass to make it green. Seriously now. You know, everybody talks all the time.
No. What type of fertilizer put on there?
I mean, seriously.
And I think surprised. People always, yes. And the one thing that I tell people when they walk up to me and say that, I was like, no, you don't want my life. Guess what? You need to be who you are. And you be the great person that you are because I see greatness in you, but that doesn't involve you looking at my life. Mm-hmm. That involves you looking at your life and where you can be great in because, oh, well, you know, some of my mentees, oh, I want a podcast too. Okay, let me let you know this. That was God sent to me. So I had to learn the ins and out of podcasting. It's not for everybody. Everybody don't have the organization skills. Everybody don't have what it takes to podcast. Let's take that. Don't take on the next best thing and think it's going to be easy for you if it was not gifted for you. And I think people
and everybody doesn't really have your vision. Oh, you have to. Everybody has their own unique vision. I mean, God uses people in different ways. You know,
yes.
You know. So it's not necessarily for you, or that's not your particular journey. So all the time I tell people, they say, oh, you got such a big, beautiful home. But then if I told you how I got it, would you really want to go through that? You know what I'm saying? How I got it. You know what I mean? How I got it. So, you know, we were in the process to purchase a home. And then, you know, when she passed away, I was financially able just to do. So if do you really want to go through that? So like I said, try not to compare because you don't know what that story, what's behind those stories or whatever. But like I said, just yeah, you got it. You got it. So in growing and then allowing myself the process, I've been fortunate enough to meet someone and, you know, got engaged with them. And I didn't think I had the capacity to fall in love again, but they reminded me of the goodness in the world. They reminded me of, you know, it's okay. She's not judgmental, you know, about anything. She's not intimidated by my previous situation of losing someone that I love because she also understands grief. But had I not been in the space where I was, you know, processing my emotions, I could have missed out on yet another blessing, you know, that happened to come my way, you know. And it's funny because she knew of, you know, my first wife and said that I would never look at her as competition. She says, if anything, I would seek her approval, you know, and it just gave me pause. She says that I would be remiss not to acknowledge her presence in your life and how important that was, you know, to be with someone for 7 years, you know, and I'm only like 39. So that's a significant block of time in my life at this moment, at this present time for me. So, you know, just to meet that person and then she's so supportive and so nurturing and has the same style love language that I do because she receives it and gives it in the same way. A lot of the time people talk about the love language that they give, but they don't talk about how they receive it. And it could be very different. You know, just I learned a lot about it. You know, initially, you know, dating, it was, you know, nervous because I don't want the person to feel like I'm comparing them. And that's what you can't do. You can't compare. And I've been fortunate enough that has never been my narrative was compare. And then just address whatever it is that you feel. And she's so supportive on the days when I may be feeling down because I've heard a particular song or just something that kind of triggered that grief that is chronic that will just pop up. She's very nurturing and loving and understanding and compassionate. And you know, and I couldn't have asked for a better partner, because that's important. That's important. And then being with my first wife, she set the standard of what a healthy relationship looked like. And so, you know, it was
Right.
very familiar with, you know, the new person that I'm with. And so that is essential, you know, especially losing a love like that, you know. So, but the dating, you know, it's strange. I'm just like, oh man. At one point, it's like, oh, I'm single again. Like, how does this look? How does this work? Because you do miss companionship. You do
Right.
miss someone being with you, because I didn't know that silence could be so loud. I don't know if that makes sense, but who knew that it could be so
Oh
loud?
yeah.
And it was like
And the
somebody could be in the other room.
right.
Yeah. And you just where you are, and you're just like, wow. It's just because someone was home. It was companionship, you know. So I've definitely met like a great companion, and she's just everything I could have asked for. She's the kind of love that I wasn't looking for, but was everything that I was needing.
Mm-hmm. Wow. And that's
So,
important. And I
and so
think
I still growing. Go ahead.
those who are coming in, we're talking about Tiffany, Dirty Red, the journey, just making sure that we're figuring out what that journey is, and the grief of a loss of a loved one who was her wife. Also, I'm talking about the absence of a parent too, as well, and just making
Healing.
sure that
Mm-hmm.
healing, 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 healing in your way, not Tiffany ways. And we came here to give out gems, points, and positions to know that number one is healing starts with you. It don't start with the other people. It starts with you. And I think most people think that people should be healing them, like therapists and doctors and things like that. It's a process that you have to assist in this process. Because if you don't, guess what happens? Things can go away real quickly if you're not in that process. And it's about accountability and responsibility being the two most important things. That I'm accountable for whatever happened in these actions. I'm responsible for my feelings. I'm responsible for my emotions. But most of all, I'm responsible for living. So I think that responsibility piece take a whole gamut of things of just be accountable and responsible. And most people don't want to be accountable and responsible
It's
for what
okay.
happened.
Mm-hmm.
We have that in life. If you want to do better, you're going to have to be accountable and responsible. And if you're irresponsible, you'll see things happen to you that are irresponsible. If you're unaccountable, you'll see that unaccountability fall in different areas too as well. So we must understand that in healing, what does healing look like specifically for you? That's it.
Developing healthy tools.
Her journey. This is her talking about the things that she did to not overcome, but manage. Being able to manage. And see, most people say, well, I just want to get rid of it. That's easier said than done, because sometimes you can't get rid of it. You can manage it, but getting rid of it, it probably won't go anywhere, because if you having that goal setting said, I'm going to get rid of it, it usually doesn't happen like that. So if you manage it and then maybe overcome it, the thing is it will still be there, but you overcame it, making sure that you manage it well enough so it doesn't come back up again. But I'm the type of person is I manage it. And managing is what needs to be said versus, oh, I just want to get rid of it. Because guess what? We are emotional, we are feeling type of people.
There's
But
some things you
understand the
can't get
number
rid of.
one thing, you can't. You can't. But you can manage those feelings. You can
Absolutely.
manage those emotions. And you can manage on how you move forward.
Absolutely.
Because you have control over it. And that's one thing people don't understand, that you have that control. But then again, in going back down, you have to release some of those wounds that you had as a child.
You gotta address them. You
You
have
have to
to.
talk about
And
them.
it's okay.
They got to
It's
come
okay.
up.
It's okay. I tell people all the time, we have to address them. From men that I've talked to, I feel like society as a whole do men a disservice. We don't allow them the space to feel what they're feeling. We associate, um, the emotions with a weakness, and so therein lies an error. Like, I'll give an analogy. Like, if a little girl
Right.
falls on the floor, it's like, "Oh, sweetheart, you okay?" And then, like, if
Right.
a man or your little boy falls, get your ass up. You already told him
Get out.
that he can't address his
Right.
emotions. And just as a woman, I find that our greatest weakness sometimes, for me, has been my greatest strength. Like, I'm a nurturer of life, whether I exercise it or not, and so I'm built to love. And the way that I've noticed that I've nurtured love is the same way that I've nurtured pain. um you could take that back to scripture. I'm not sure where, some people are in their beliefs. We talk about
Mhm.
Bathsheba and David. It was the same thing. You're nurturing the
Right.
pain like you nurture the love. And it's like I had to learn some things about
Mhm.
myself. So like I said, the grief plays a pivotal part in it. And it was a key for me to open up truly what all was going on with me. So it wasn't just that. And it's kind of forced me to deal with other things that had nothing to do with the grief. Just internalizing, and just moving forward and just trying to grow and be my best authentic self in my process and my time.
Yes.
And then, like, those tools that I've found have helped me develop that. So like I said, it was the coloring, it was the talking to my therapist, it was the journaling, because I do like to write. These things help me get these emotions out and address them and process them and understand what it was that I'm feeling, and realize the epicenter of them. A lot of the times we dealing with, like an earthquake. You want to go to the aftershocks, but you're not going to the epicenter. Again, I can quote another story out the Bible. We can talk about the woman that bled for 12 years. It wasn't
Right.
that she needed money, because finances were depleted because of,
Mhm.
her going to all these quack doctors that couldn't heal her. And then at the time, you know,
Right.
they said that a woman that bled was unclean, so she was denied access to the, religious sanctuary. She didn't have any friends. No one wanted to be around her. It was almost like she had
Right.
like leper. But she said, if I just could see Jesus and touch his clothes, I'd be healed. She knew exactly what the root cause was,
Thank
and it was the bleeding. It wasn't the lack of
you.
friends. It wasn't the
Thank
money.
God.
It wasn't all of those. I'm telling you, it wasn't all of those things. And so it's like, literally, I had to go into my life and find out what has caused me to bleed. And the bleeding has been that I've
Mhm.
been harboring a lot of hatred to people that I've never met. The absence of my father, just not liking
Right.
myself as much as I thought I did. You know what I mean? Just trying to deal with some of the traumas of, like I said, just living this particular lifestyle, dealing with toxic masculinity. Dealing with, so many
Mhm.
things, operating in fear, and I tell people all the time, masculinity is not a gender, but I've dealt with it from
Mhm. Ab-
the LGBTQIA plus spectrum. I've dealt with it from, men. Just, and it's just, having to navigate all of those different emotions. So it's like I had to figure out what is it that actually is triggering me, and what is it that I'm, that I need to adjust to, and not accept, and advocate for myself and speak my truth without necessarily being brutal. A lot of the time you feel like you can't
Right.
speak, or you're passive. No, speak your truth always. It just doesn't have to be brutal, you know? So it's just been, like I
Right.
said, so
And,
yeah, go ahead.
and that's one thing we do on the radio voice is we want truth and transparency, because it got lost somewhere in the dialogue. It got lost. We've been fed so many lies and so many untruths, that what is your truth? And that's what we need to start speaking, is our truth. So the generations and those people that are coming after us, that know that, speak it. Like I always reference my godson is, I tell him, use your mouth. Don't use this. Don't use your feelings. Use your mouth. Tell me what I did wrong. Because guess what? I'm an adult. I may
Right.
have done you wrong, not know about it.
Yeah. Yeah, I think it's just a
So
combination of
I
the
have
heart
that.
and the logic. Yeah, you're absolutely right.
I, no, don't walk up those stairs, man.
Yeah,
Tell me
no,
why you stomping.
yeah,
You have a
absolutely.
feeling there. That's the only
Yeah,
thing I want to know. What happened?
okay.
What? when he tells me, I apologize.
Mm-hmm.
How can you help me to where I can make you feel better?
Yeah. You get just
Because at
developing
the end
those
of the day,
muscles.
you have to. It's okay
Yeah.
for you to cry. That's a young man. Okay, guess what? If I don't make that comfortable for you, guess what? You're gonna go out in this world and you're gonna have some uncomfortable situations that you
Absolutely.
don't know how to relate to.
Yeah, because
Then you're gonna go pick
your
up a gun.
interpersonal skills will be affected. How you dealing in relationships will be affected.
All
Because I be telling people all the time, honey, be careful with that heart, because that heart will fool you. We say in Jeremiah, the heart is a wicked thing. You know, you have
yes,
to be very careful. You know, and then when you're vulnerable and you're not addressing your own trauma, you in turn will hurt somebody else because you haven't addressed your stuff. You know, a trauma response is not being able to accept help. Why?
right.
Because you always been told, God bless the child that has his own. Well, Jesus had 12 whole disciples. Why you feel like you got to do everything on your own? Especially if someone's genuinely in your corner and they're not operating out of malice. Seriously, that's
And he
really
picked
like a
him.
thing. You know, and you're so victim to the storm that in your life that you just realize that you can't be receptive to it. Like I struggle with that. Just this super independence. That's a trauma response. So it's just like just trying to understand all of these emotions that I'm feeling, like and try to grow from them and don't let them allow me to miss out on things and relationships with people and that are platonic, not necessarily on a romantic level, but you have to be receptive. You have to be receptive. So I'm just in a space where I'm just pretty much open and working on being my best authentic self. So I think, like I said, it looks different for
And
everyone, but yeah, it looks different for everyone. But I
this is the
really,
opportunity for this is opportunity for our listeners to ask any questions. So if you have any questions for Tiffany while we're here, let's go
yes,
ahead and put them in the chat down here. We thank you guys for listening to as well. I know we had some people to say some things before. They said, hi Tiff,
amen.
brown skin. Me said, you are the main character of your journey. You write it. That is so correct. You write it. You are the main character of your journey. You write it. We've had several people come in, join. Do anybody else have any questions right now? Diz Haynes 18 says, good point, sis. A couple of people said, hey, here and there. We did miss it because we were in an in-depth conversation. And I want everybody to know that we will be having more of these conversations
Okay,
because the Rise Creating Your Voice at January 22 that we are going to do it on the Podbean app where we have the listening audience and things like that, and also being able to ask questions on the line. So we want you guys to definitely start looking at our episodes that we have. By December, we promise we're going to have 100 of you guys. We're going to have 100 episodes. December 31st, I'm going to drop my 100th episode. Trust me. I got about 20 more to go. But it's going to happen. I thank God for the vision. I thank God for what the platform. And this is free information. I'm not asking you to pay anything. I know some people like to monetize or things like that. I'm not asking this because guess what? He said how to reach the masses, men of every birth. The answer, Jesus is the key. And the foundation of this is Jesus is the key. Because the thing is, we need to have more conversations and more dialogue like these because we need to heal the land. And if we don't have these conversations, and if people are not hearing these conversations, guess what? The lies continue to get fed to them. I don't
okay,
want that. That's not my on earth. My assignment here on earth is truth and transparency. Because the number one thing that says in the Bible, God wants true worshipers to worship him in spirit and in truth. So if you're not living your truth, guess what? Are you worshiping God? Uh-oh. Um, on the next part,
but
I'm
yeah,
just saying. He
I
said
really
God,
appreciate you for sharing this platform.
he said he wants spirit and truth. So
Yeah.
that part. Go ahead.
So I was saying I really appreciate you for allowing me the space. So before I log off, I really appreciate the time. and just listening to you,
Yeah.
and hopefully, you know, my words of encouragement, you know, to those out there that maybe suffered a loss, or you know that, you know, there is love after loss, there is life after loss. Healing looks
Hmm.
different for everyone, but it's actually a process. It takes work. Faith without works is dead. You need to put in some kind of work
Yeah.
in order to get. It's not about, you know, the end goal, because some situations that, you know, journey doesn't end. You just gotta go to get through it. You gotta go through it. It doesn't mean it's an end. It's just a process that you have to actively work through to get through. So I highly encourage everyone to, you know, deep dig within, and find out the things that are triggering to you and what's going on. And it's okay to get therapy. It really is. I highly encourage it. I wish I would have talked to a therapist sooner, prior to even my initial experience. Like, it's really imperative that you just address some of the stuff that you sit with. You know, you don't realize sometimes how much you hold and compartmentalize in your head. So, you know, I highly encourage that for everyone. That's all.
And we want to thank you, Tiffany, for having that vulnerability, because we need to learn how to be vulnerable, because that should be a platform that we're able to express ourselves without judgment.
And I think that's what it is. You have to have the
And,
courage to not be shamed, not allow yourself to feel
yeah,
shamed
yeah,
about what you're feeling. Like, you know how in
yeah,
class you was apprehensive about
yeah.
raising your hand because you didn't want to be the one that asked the
Right,
question,
right,
and they said no question is stupid. That's the level of vulnerability that you
right.
have to be in order to, you know,
Yeah,
embark on healing. Because you, even a therapist, she can't or he can't fix what you don't allow. If they don't know and you're not sharing,
yes,
then you it won't get addressed. So it requires a level of
yeah.
vulnerability that a lot of people are not unable to express at the moment. I won't say
But then,
never. Never say never.
but understand this, even in the Bible, because the thing is, through your test, you have testimonies. And they said they should share their testimonies. So we're already living what's prefaced in the Bible. And the thing is, this is your testimony. And your testimony is to make sure that people heal from whatever they're going through too. Or to give them a description of some things that they can do, because still healing. It's still healing.
Absolutely.
And we're not healing ourselves with our testimony, and we're healing through our testimony. And most people don't understand that. So if
Hmm.
you're not telling people, and maybe it's the crowd that you're hanging around, because most people going switching your testimony into what they feel like it should be. So, some people do that. They go
Hey,
and
be
switch it and make
careful
it
now.
sound bad.
What they say, salt looks like sugar.
Exactly.
You got to be clear now. And let me tell you, the devil funny. He know the word better than you do. Ooh, he know the word better than you. Remember, he was in charge of the choir, and it was the prettiest angel, and of them all. So that's why I tell you, sometimes also too, especially in a relationship, the things that you are deserving of and what you
Yeah.
need in your life don't always come
Yeah.
packaged how you like. Remember, he knows your weakness, so he gonna package it up for you and present it to you just how you like. So you say
Right.
you wasn't tall, dark, and handsome, and bow-legged, or shaped a particular way, it gonna send it right to you, and it doesn't necessarily mean that that's for you. So, but yeah, it's just been interesting, that experience. But I appreciate the love from
And
everyone. And
yeah,
stay
somebody
tuned.
so much. I asked you
Oh,
for
I love
years
you
to write
too.
a
Yeah.
book. Like, yeah.
Yeah,
And
I'm
that's what
actually
I
working on it.
already I
I'm
already
working on
told.
I'm working on a memoir, and it's in process, and it speaks to some of this. Actually, it focuses more on healing and being accepting of my lifestyle, because just being a woman that's masculine
Yeah.
presenting, I had to contend with a lot of spaces where I felt like I had to shrink myself, or um, make others feel
Yeah.
comfortable, and how being a woman, being black, and being masculine presenting, those have their dynamics and how they intersect, and then the intersectionality of it all,
Right.
because each one of them I get discriminated on, from walking into the ladies room to being excluded from heterosexual cis women spaces. Like, oh, we're having a
Mhm.
bachelorette party, I didn't want to invite you because everyone didn't want to be objectified by you sexually, or I only hang out with you in groups because they're not comfortable in their own skin, and just, or the toxic masculinity from the masculine presenting women, or just from men, hey, from, derogatory comments. So the book is in the works, and so it's the title is going to be, it's All Little Girls Don't Wear Pink. So it's a memoir, Hopefully it's a conversation for diversity and inclusion.
And all.
So. But on that note, I really gotta go because it is Saturday and I do have guests coming over. But I appreciate the time and I look forward to chatting with you again.
We definitely thank you for your time and your participation. Like I said, as well as your vulnerability. But before we leave on that note, I want to just quote this blogger that passed away in 2018 that I didn't know. But one thing that she said, that she has $1 million bank account. She has luxury cars. She has a beautiful house. She has this. She has that. But the one thing that she was missing was love. So you can have all of that stuff encompassed, but without love, what is it?
It's in Corinthians. It's patient, it's kind, it's not arrogant or boastful, it does not brag. Y'all better check out that Corinthians.
I mean, I think people need to understand that love is not bought. Although you can try to emphasize that, love is not bought. It's an affection. It's an emotion. And we must realize that. But I know you have to go. So tell a friend, tell a foe, tell your spouse.
I sure will.
Tell everyone. We'll see you in the next podcast. We want to thank you. Make sure you follow Tiffany at Tiffany Lattimore on Facebook. And also dirty_red on Instagram. Because this is going to be an infamous person someday. Because I already speak into existence, not saying I appreciate anything. But when I speak over lives, guess what? It happens. I love the camaraderie that we have.
Thank you. Speak all of that into life.
The conversation.
Thank you so much.
Yes. So thank you again. And to all the listeners and the followers, thank you too as well. And we'll see you later. Goodbye.